It was created to provide us with freedom. Our city became a great beacon of hope and liberty to the world. It was a shining city upon a hill. 15 years ago, freedom died.
The Development Party has now gained control of the center.
Today marks the first step forward in the development of our great city. All must contribute, because from each, everything shall be given to all.
Opposition to the new policies are on the rise.
Our progress will not be stopped, because when we provide for every need, then you are fully developed.
Something's very wrong with our city.
How can you say that? Look at everything they give us.
Don't you see? The more they give us, the more they control us. We become nothing but passive people waiting in lines. I can't live like this anymore.
Archer, you did not pay your contribution yesterday.
Who are you?
People who want to change things. Now is time to bring freedom back to our people.
Too long we've been waiting in the shadows. Now is the time we need to act.
The so-called liberty movement is gaining momentum.
Snuff them
Out! We are all shaped by the times in which we live. So let this time be defined by freedom. Let our lives be the spark that ignites the flames of liberty. We are a movement on fire. Will you take up the torch?
Okay, hi everyone. That is the base of Donald Trump's support. Of course, the Tea Party movement began long before Donald Trump announced his candidacy for the presidency of the United States in 2015. And the Tea Party references popular American romantic symbols of identity, including the American Revolution. Tea Party it stands for taxed enough already, reduce taxes, keep taxes low. You see that in the reference here, right? Fiscal responsibility, government should be small, free markets, again, elements of the re-expression of the American creed. And the Tea Party emerged when Barack Hussein Obama was elected president of the United States in 2008. And his policies, including trying to reform the American healthcare system to move it more in the direction of guaranteed medical coverage or insurance for more and more people, if not guaranteed, easier access through government intervention in the marketplace to regulate and guide the medical insurance privilege market in the United States to make medical insurance to cover hospital and medical care bills more fiscally tolerable to more of the population, including more of the American population that is finding it very difficult, if not possible, to spend the money necessary to buy their own private health insurance system policies in order to pay for their medical coverage in hospitals by doctors in hospitals. And because up until Barack Obama, medical insurance was a private affair between oneself and one's employer, typically, whoever your employer happened to be. And aside from the poor, the very poor who had no financial assets, who could access basic medical coverage for the very poor who could demonstrate they had no financial assets under the Medicaid program in the United States that began in the 1960s, the late 1960s. This medical care system in the United States relied upon private provision of medical insurance. And with the Barack Obama administration, one of the big legislative achievements of the Obama administration was the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act, also called the Obamacare program that was passed, I believe, in 2010, created a system that still exists today, whereby the government will help subsidize people to purchase healthcare insurance, medical care insurance, while continuing to maintain the use of private insurance companies, but with the U.S. government helping to subsidize the purchase of that medical care insurance system. And so this Tea Party movement emerged in that context in response to that effort by the Obamacare administration by the Barack Obama administration to expand healthcare coverage, health insurance care coverage, I should say, health insurance care coverage. And it references the Tea Party. And again, this ties into the Constitution because the American independence movement and the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the founders of the United States are very powerful emotional symbols that are manipulated by political leaders today, by political actors today, to try to persuade other Americans to vote for them, to support them, and not to support their adversaries, and claiming that, for example, their policies that they are advocating when running for office as members of the U.S. government, whether at the national level or even at the state or local level, they will manipulate these symbols, these powerful emotional symbols of American self-identity that are connected with the romantic imagery that Americans have of their American independence war and the American Revolution to create and found the United States. And the Tea Party is one of these events which led up to the American Independence War that all American children in schools learn when they go to school about the American Revolution. And the Tea Party was a civil action by the opponents of Britain who were opposed to the British government imposing taxes on Americans for their tea. And of course, because they were primarily let me open up this shared screen here. So just to make sure you're able to see this, you see the reference to the Tea Party movement. Of course, there's a Wikipedia entry for it that references what I was describing earlier. And beginning basically with the, not coincidentally, with the coming into office of the first African-American president, Barack Hussein Obama, and the suspicions that they have and these conservative populists have that Barack Obama is quote unquote a socialist, he was advocating socialism, and referencing the Boston Tea Party of 1773, which an event which launched the American Revolution. So the Boston Tea Party, you click here and you can see the typical portrayal of it, American rebels dumping tea from English merchant ships, dumping the tea into the ocean because the tea was being taxed to pay taxes to the British government, and the American colonists opposing this new taxation by the British government on tea, which was of course one of the major imports into the American colonies from the British Empire. And it's ironically called the Boston Tea Party because it's happening in Boston Harbor, and of course this led to a famous American expression that all American children learn in school today: no taxation without representation. That the taxes that the British government was placing on the tea that the Americans had to pay to buy this tea was not fair because the American colonists did not have representation in the British government. They did not have members of the House of Commons sitting in the British Parliament. The House of Commons being the popular house in the British legislature. So American colonists had no representatives in that legislature. So there was anger about that these taxes were being imposed on the American colonists without representation. American colonists being represented in the British legislature, and again, that goes back to this fundamental notion that American colonists and the founders of the American Republic, including the writers of the American Constitution, which you're studying this week, viewed themselves generally as Englishmen living in North America, And as Englishmen, they assume that they had certain fundamental English rights that all subjects of the British monarch had won from the British authorities over centuries of struggle, including that if the British monarch, the British king, the British crown wanted more taxation, wanted more money through taxation, that the British monarch had to consult with the British legislature, the British Parliament, in other words, the British Parliament, and if the British Parliament had to acquiesce to those requests by the British Crown, by the British monarchy, by the British government to pay the taxes, to impose the taxes and pay the taxes to the British government, the British Crown, for whatever the British Crown might want to use the money for, to fight a war or typically to fight wars, to pay for an army, to pay for a navy, and so on. And of course, the American colonists view themselves as Englishmen living in North America, and so they assumed that they had these fundamental English rights, British rights, as subject to the British Crown that were being violated by the British government, imposing the tea taxes, other forms of taxes like the Stamp Act, and other forms of taxes without the English colonists in North America having representation in the British Parliament. So that it sets much of the framework for the context for which the American Constitution was written. That experience of distrust of a strong central government imposing its own agenda, its own wishes upon the interests of people living in North America would play a fundamentally important role in shaping the development of the American Constitution. And again, this going back to American culture and its foundation by colonists who rejected a strong central government, also as a certain assumption, of course, that the strong central government should not be interfering or should not be very active in American political life. And that was a trigger for the American Independence War and the American Revolution. But very quickly, the founders of the United States, the so-called framers of the American Constitution, the writers of the American Constitution, confronted the challenges of building a modern national state in early modern times, a modern national state with an early modern national economy. And building a modern national economy to maximize potential for more wealth creation, for more expansion, for expanding outward from the East Coast of the United States out to the West, because of course there was always designs by these English colonists living in North America very soon after they were established that there was tremendous resources further and further west on the North American continent that they wanted to exploit. So once the American Independence War was over, and the Americans succeeded in getting their dominance recognized over at least the eastern part of North America, south of the Great Lakes region, where the 5 Great Lakes, Lake Huron, Superior, Erie, Ontario, and Michigan are located, and east of the Mississippi River. I mean, that's a big expansion of the territory controlled by these English, British colonists who had now won their independence. And so there was always this awareness that the American states were going to expand. The question is, how far were they going to expand? At least out to the Mississippi River, but very soon, of course, they would have plans to expand all the way out to the Pacific Ocean, the Pacific coast, the west coast of North America, including California, what is today California, Wisconsin, Washington, sorry, California, Washington, Oregon, the 3 states on the West Pacific coast of North America today, and creating a constitution that would allow for the integration of these new economic territories, these new territories into the United States. So, and that need for some central coordination, central cooperation in order to make this economic expansion more feasible, and also to provide for military security for the newly independent country would push the founders of the United States towards creating a stronger central government. And that was reflected in the American Constitution. As you know from your readings, the American Constitution was the second attempt the founders of the United States made to create a framework for coordinating and cooperating the resources of the 13 British colonies in North America to first, under the Articles of Confederation, to go about the task of trying to fight the British Empire, to try to fight the British Army and Navy that was attempting to reassert control over these 13 colonies, these 13 American colonies, which then became 13 American states. And that Articles of Confederation was adopted as a framework by which to try to coordinate and collaborate among these 13 states after the Declaration of Independence, to cooperate and coordinate their resources, to raise an army, to coordinate policies, to fight and win the war against the British. But after the British lost the war, still there were serious problems in terms of maintaining security in the newly independent country. There were problems with paying off the debts that the American Independence War had generated, tremendous economic debts that were owed to various lenders to the American political authorities fighting the British in the Independence War. These debts had to be paid back. And it was great disorganization, incoherence, and difficulty in coming up with the financial resources to pay back those debts, which was necessary if it was going to be a functioning financial system in North America, a functioning financial system where banks could make loans for investors who wanted to build factories, acquire more land, buy land with loans from banks. So paying off these debts was necessary, and paying off these debts required the creation of a national government which could take upon itself the obligations of paying back these national debts and convince both domestic and foreign prospective lenders and investors, and also military threats and allies, that the new country was able to defend and meet its obligations and defend its interests. And that would push these 13 states to agree to a stronger central government, which would become known as the federal government. And so somebody has a chat here, oh, okay. So that would be the context, but still the suspicion and hostility towards a strong central government continues. Well, you can say it continues among many Americans to the present, but there's assumption that the national government would only be responsible for doing what local and state governments in the United States were seen as unable to provide on their own. The individual states of the United States, for example, could not create a functioning Navy that would be able to defend the United States from still the very powerful British Empire and the French Empire and the Spanish and other empires. So, of course, the federal government would then be responsible for creating a national Navy, for example, because the states simply couldn't do that effectively. Similarly, also to provide for to raise an army if there was going to be another war with another foreign power, whether it be, and there would be, of course, the War of 1812 would emerge 50 years after the American Independence War against the British. And of course, that required the creation of American Army and then along with an American Navy. And that had to be provided by the US federal government. But this notion that, the federal government is only should do what it's clear the states are not able to do. And it's something that was looked upon with heightened alertness, even insecurity. And of course, this hostility to strong central government to create a strong national economy and that would remove barriers to the creation of a more profitable, more developed, more industrial American economy would contribute to the conflict over slavery and enslavement of forced labor in the United States, of African Americans, forced labor, and eventually it would lead to the Civil War as the Southern states sought to break away from the United States because they thought their quote unquote way of life. I mean, they had built an entire civilization on the basis of slavery. It wasn't just an economic system, it was a way of thinking, a way of culture, a way of politics, a way of understanding what it meant to be a person in the South, in the Southern states, the United States, was built upon this system of enslavement, of forced labor, because as a theme that I introduced in all my classes, human beings have a tendency to want to understand the world in a way that allows them to feel good about themselves. So that's just the way human beings are. And so if I'm going to enslave a Black person and I'm going to invest my money in enslaving people and to raise cotton or tobacco and make lots of money raising and growing cotton to sell to Great Britain for its textile factories, or raising tobacco to sell around the world, I'm going to see slavery as a good thing, not as a bad thing, because I benefit so much from it. And I'm going to see Black people as inferior, and I'm going to see my way of life that is based upon this as inherently desirable, particularly when it's being challenged by the rise of a new economy in which the most efficient and effective way to make economic wealth would be through the commodification of labor. Instead of buying an entire human being and forcing them to be your commodity through enforced labor, through enslavement, buying labor from people in chunks, in pieces, by time, right? Paying people for their labor by hour or by day or by week or by month. And allocating that labor where it's most useful, rather than having to buy a human being and require them to be unskilled labor working picking cotton on a cotton plantation, and then being obligated to maintain that system, because that's the entire system in which those people in the southern parts of the United States live. So what I'm saying is that the American Constitution, however, when it was written at the end of the 18th century, was created as a result of compromises among those who economic and political interests who wanted a stronger central government to make more economic opportunity available for the new emerging industrializing economy, the industrial economy, beginning with with early commodities like tobacco and cotton to produce cotton mills and textile mills, and later other forms of economic activity that required the development of a commodity basis economy to support industrialization, versus those actors in the American South who for 150, 200 years, they've had slavery in the United States. They built an entire culture, worldview, mindset, not to mention economy, on that existence of that de facto caste system in America, in which in South America, in the southern part of the United States, where people had their status assigned in life by the color of their skin. And even those people that didn't own slaves but were white in the American South, in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and the expansion westward of those southern states even those people that were white but were poor, they still would vest their own identity in that slavery system because it was one way by which they could feel that they had a comfortable, satisfactory existence, because they could always take a scriptive status refuge in their own thinking, in understanding that regardless of whatever else they were not Black. So, and they were automatically better than at least 1/3 of the population in terms of social status. And they didn't have to do anything. They were born white, and I could feel good about myself because I felt better than somebody. I could feel better about myself than somebody else. That I am automatically better as the result of my birth as a white man from everybody else who's not white. And that becomes the foundation of an entire society, an entire caste system that people invest not only their economic resources, but their identities. I mean, keep in mind, most of the people that in the 1860s during the American Civil War, most of the white soldiers fighting for the American Confederacy for the Southern states, most of them did not own any slaves. These people were fighting and dying to defend Southern way of life, to favor the Southern Confederacy. And most of those white men who were fighting and dying and killing and being wounded and suffering horrible deaths, they didn't even have any Black people as slaves. They didn't know. I mean, to own a slave was a high cost investment. Only the most prosperous people in the American South were able to own a Black person. So why did they fight so hard for Confederate independence from the United States? Because it's how they understand who they are, that we cannot live in a world in which Black people become equal to me. We know Black people are inferior because they are the enslaved. And to change that threatens who I am. If I'm a white Southerner, particularly a white Southern man, right? But going back to the American Constitution, when the American Constitution was written, it was the result of a compromise among these Southern slave-owning interests and these Northern states to come up with a way by which to generate a federal government that could carry out the minimum requirements necessary for creating a modern, what we call today a modern state, a modern national state. And that means creating a single national economy, a single national military, and that would be able to carry out its obligations in international relations, including the obligation at times to go to war. So that's the context for discussion of the Constitution. So let me open up. I thought I had this already open here. So we go to well, let's go to the PowerPoint slides. Here's the Constitution, which I think you can see that. And make sure you can see that. So the American Constitution is founded by. We already covered this origins of a new nation, of the United States. Colonists are coming from Europe, predominantly from Europe by choice, while African Americans are brought over as enslaved. They're accustomed to their independence, to self-governance. It's something that they have to take care of themselves in North America because London is far, far away. So they have to be responsible for their own security. They have to be responsible for their own welfare. And that becomes the assumption of what it means to live in North America, that you are responsible for your own local communities. And the development of industry is beginning with as I said, with the early industrialization, the development of the textile industry, and founded by people that were rejecting the aristocracy, the Yangban feudalism, the rigid class system. And so to go on here, well, we're running already out of time, so we need to go on to the debate today. But some of the points I wanted to highlight was that beginning in the middle of the 18th century, London attempted to exercise more and more control over the colonies, in part to get the colonies to pay more money in the form of taxes to cover the costs to the British of providing security for the British for the British colonies that were requiring more and more military expenditures by London. That the British defeated the French in North America in the middle of the 18th century in what was called the 7 Years' War in Europe, in the United States, in North America, it's called the French and Indian War. But it was still a very expensive war from the British point of view. And of course, the French were still involved in North America, even though they lost what is today Quebec, French Canada, to the British. Still, the French controlled much of the territory west of the Mississippi. So the French Empire is still at present in North America, and the British have to keep a lot of military forces in North America because even though they won the French and Indian War, the 7 Years' War, they still had to make a major commitment to maintaining military forces and resources in North America. And that meant they wanted the colonists to pay more money for the more taxes to cover the costs. And they started, as I mentioned, the Stamp Act, other acts, the Sugar Act, and this was generating hostility in the part of the colonists. And no taxation without representation, starting to boycott British goods, including tea, by throwing the tea into the ocean, the Boston Tea Party. And just to go on here, and then the colonies start meeting with each other to decide how they're going to organize themselves. The committees of correspondence, Larry mentioned the Boston Tea Party, more efforts by the London government to enforce its control and taxation. Even though the taxation wasn't really high, it was just very irritating to the American colonists that the British had been pretty much out of their lives for as long as the colonies have been there, with brief interruptions. And now suddenly London is everywhere with the Stamp Act, the other forms of acts to raise taxes. London is enforcing its will everywhere, even though the costs of the taxation were not that high. So the first Continental Congress emerges. Continental meaning the 13 colonies send the 13 states send the representatives to begin to organize their communication with London, and eventually it would lead to the Declaration of Independence being written by the Continental Congress. And the Second Continental Congress emerges basically to prepare to fight this war and to mobilize the American population, at least the white population, to fight this war. They appoint George Washington as commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, who become the first president of the United States and chair the Constitutional Convention. The Declaration of Independence is written at this time. I mean, these are all romantic, positive, powerful symbols of American national identity today in the United States, with Ben Franklin, John Adams, Robert Livingston, Robert Sherman, James Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson and borrowing heavily from John Locke's 2 Treatises of Government. The Articles of Confederation are ratified at the Continental Congress to try to organize the 13 states and their resources to fight the war. It doesn't work very well. It's very difficult to get laws passed through the Continental Congress, even though after the British agree to cease fire, to stop fighting, to keep the control, still the newly independent country is going through a critical period of ineffectiveness in implementing government policies that were necessary to organize the new independent country in a way that would allow its economy and its security to be more likely guaranteed. That would lead, including, for example, even domestic rebellions. There was the Shays Rebellion was a rebellion that the American authorities could not suppress through their own efforts to organize the military. So they had to actually pay mercenaries to suppress this rebellion by Shay over the failure of the US government to pay back its debts to those people who invested in bonds to support the US independence army. The US government wasn't able to pay back those investments. And so because of also with economic suffering and recession, it led to rebellion by this veteran of the American Revolutionary War, a man named by the name of Shay. And So the 13 states agreed they had to revise the Articles of Confederation, and they met at Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, and they not only they went far beyond revising the Articles of Confederation. They came up with a new constitution, and and it was called under the Virginia Plan. Keep in mind, 55 of the 74 delegates from the 13 states worked together to create this constitution, and most of them are rich property owners. They're going to be, their interests are going to play a fundamentally important role in shaping this constitution. There were different plans put forth by the state of New Jersey and the state of Virginia. Virginia wanted a powerful central government, and the Virginia and New Jersey plans were combined to produce the Great Compromise. There would be two houses of Congress, one in which the representatives would be directly elected by the people, and a second house of Congress. This would become the Senate, in which each state, regardless of its size, how big or small it was in population, would get 2 senators, and this would be the House of Representatives. And you know, part of this compromise with the slave interests in the southern part of the United States, it states that in calculating how many representatives in the House of Representatives, 3/5 of all of the persons, that means all other people that were enslaved and could not vote, they would be counted in calculating how many representatives each of those states would have in the House of Representatives. So there already this tension, it's strong tension between the slavery-based economy in the South and their interests, and the northern emerging industrializing economy in the North, that reduce these awkward compromises, including a 3/5 compromise, that a slave is a 3/5 of a human being. And so each slave counts for 3/5 of a human being in calculating the population that should be represented in the House of Representatives. And this would not be overturned until after the Civil War. The election of a president had to be decided. There would be one person executive, and the Electoral College, sort of how the president was to be chosen the way the Pope is chosen, right? Originally, the president wasn't to be elected by the people. The president was supposed to be elected by a special Electoral College consisting of delegates sent from the states to a convention to choose who's going to be the president. The way the cardinals meet to choose will be the Pope. And it was called the Electoral College, like the College of Cardinals in the Catholic Church. Including how to remove that person if they were bad through a trial of the Senate. Basically, this would be modified over the years so that those electors who go to the Electoral College, those representatives from the states as the electors of each state, would be directly elected by the people of each state. But still to this day, the president is not directly elected by the popular vote in the election. The person becomes the president who wins most of the electors in the election. So basically, each state in the United States has an election for electors, and the winner of the election in Ohio, in New Jersey, in California, in Texas, all of the states, the winner of the election, whether it be Trump versus Biden in 2020 in Texas, if more people vote for Donald Trump's candidacy, then all of the electors from the state of Texas are allocated to Donald Trump. And if California votes more for Joe Biden, then all of the electors for the state of California go to Joe Biden. And the candidate who wins a majority of Electoral College votes, when you add up all of those tallies, that person becomes president. And that's why Hillary Clinton got almost 3 million more votes, popular direct votes for president by the people of the United States in 2016 than Donald Trump, but she still lost because Donald Trump won a majority of the Electoral College votes. Hillary Clinton got a tremendous majorities in places like California, New York in the popular vote, but that's not really what counts. It doesn't matter by how much she wins the popular vote in California or New York. She just had to get one vote more than Donald Trump to get all the Electoral College votes of California and New York, for example. And she did. She got far more popular votes. But when you added up all the electoral college votes, you saw that Donald Trump won the electoral college, became president in 2016, and not Hillary Clinton. So the US Constitution insists upon separation of powers, checks and balances, federal system. Again, this concern about the central government becoming too powerful. How do you ensure that that's not possible? By separating the courts from direct control by the president, and separating also from direct control by the legislature, the Congress. The president is not directly controlled by the executive branch. The president is not directly controlled by the courts or the Congress. The Congress is not directly controlled by the president of the courts. So it's a separation of powers, and they carry out thereby checks and balances against each other because they are autonomous from each other. They're still influenced by each other, but they're autonomous. And again, to avoid tyranny and despotism by a too powerful central government. And a federal system in which the states would play a very important role, autonomous role, with the national federal government only being responsible for those tasks that the states give it. Okay, so let's go, before we go on to the details about the US Congress, let's make sure that we do the vote, we go to the attendance. And, I know I'm trying to cover a lot here because this is our short class. We only meet for 1 hour. So, and we're already almost done. And I want to make sure I get through some basic information here. So we go to smart attendance, and we're now in week 2 in smart attendance, and your number is 776. So let me put that in the chat. 776 is your smart attendance number. And now let's go to the debate. And so I'm going to also assign you to the breakout rooms on 2 rooms, pro, assigned manually, and I will rename room 1 as pro, and room 2 rename pro, yes, and rename room 2 as con, and yes, and then I will assign Kirill, Maria, Micah, I should say, Sales, and let me see, Dujin, let me see, Chun Dujin, and Cho Woo-jin, okay, to pro, and okay, and then the other 3 will go to the con, and open all the rooms. Okay, and so please join your pro and con rooms, because I assigned you based upon your paragraphs, what's your position. And the debate question, once again, is here. We go to the vote, and this is the debate topic. So pro or con? To South Koreans, the South Korean Constitution is more effective than the American Constitution because South Korea learned from the modern world's experience in creating its own constitution. So let's see, I want everybody to have a chance to speak here. And so let me flip a coin and choose who's going to speak first. So you wrote your paragraphs, you know what you have to say, because you already practiced your English in writing out the paragraph, right? So you are prepared to speak. And so, you can make your pro and con arguments here, and you can respond to each other. And so let me go now to the make sure you join your groups. So Iju Young, make sure you join your con group, Iju Young, and then talk to each other, and let's see who's going to be the first speaker. So let me choose by flipping a coin. And for pro, it will be the top 3 if it's pro, and it's con, so it's going to be Micah or Cho Woo-jin. So my head is Micah, and it's con, it's tail. So Cho Woo-jin will speak first for pro, and who's going to speak first for con? Anais is head, and Anais will speak first for con. Okay, so please help Anais prepare opening statement for con. And Cho Woo-jin make their opening statement for pro. And pro goes first, so you've got 1 minute to prepare, Sorry, we're rushing here because we only have 5 minutes left in class. And okay, so Cho Jin will speak first for pro. And yeah, this is recorded here. And okay, and I wrote my comments in response to your paragraphs. And if you made some revisions, I'll go back and check those after class to check the revisions, because I let you make some changes in your paragraphs after I checked them yesterday. I apologize for getting them a little bit late because I had a dentist appointment yesterday morning, and so I didn't get back into my office until lunchtime. So okay, so I'll check those after the class though. Okay, and Cho Woo-jin, make your pro statement. Cho Woo-jin. Cho Woo-jin. Cho Woo-jin, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, make your statement, please.
Pardon me?
Make your pro statement. Make your argument for the pro position on the debate topic. You wrote a paragraph, you can just read it if you need to.
Yes. I think I'm both pro. I think they agreed because I'm agreed because the Korean Constitution was formed to shoot the development of Korea's democracy society. Korea is a developed democracy society that affect the Korea Constitution. I think both the pro.
Okay. And today, of course, is the presidential election in Korea. And I was again thinking about this today, like when the South Korean Constitution was being written. I always wonder why the South Korean writers of the South Korean Constitution in the 20th century, they decided that they did not want their president to be able to be reelected the way American presidents since in the second half of the 20th century, after World War II, the American Constitution was amended to require that a president could only be elected twice, that a president could only serve 2 terms, 2 elected terms. And why the South Koreans chose, it would be better for Korea. It would be better for Korea if the Korean president could only be elected once. They cannot run for re-election. Why they decided at the time, when they were writing the Korean Constitution in the 20th century, why they decided, no, we don't want to have our president be reelected the way he can be reelected in France, or the way the president can be reelected in United States. Why they said, no, that would be a bad idea for Korea. I don't have an answer. Anais, make your con statement, please.
Yes. So we said that we were con because the South Korean Constitution has been heavily influenced by the American one. For example, in their constitution, they say that all the power comes from the people. So it shows importance of the people. And also we think that history is more, and experience is more important than the time of creation of the constitution.
Okay, so let's go back to the breakout rooms and see, we have more time here. So heads, it will be the top 2, and it's tails. So Juliet will be heads, and it's Juliet Salez. Make your pro statement, Juliet.
I didn't have a strong opinion on whether the South Korean think they have a like a better constitution, but I think it may be more appropriate to the modern world, because as Anaïs said, they have been influenced by the Americans, and they also have been influenced by French and English writers that we saw last time. And so they had the opportunity to not make the mistakes others had already made.
Okay, and since we're running short on time, go to see it's heads is Kim Byung-koo and it's tails. So Lee Ju-young, make your con statement, Lee Ju-young.
I think South Korea been influenced by Western world, and also Korea adopted American system, but also Korea constitution has been revised 9 times, and many revisions have made, and current constitution is very different from the initial one, and U.S. constitution, they have preserved their initial constitutions, and they made new one after that, like they made amendment to the constitution. And South Korea revised its constitution in accordance with the situation in Korea, and the United States also added and developed an amended constitution in accordance with them. So since both countries have developed in a way that adds or revises the constitution suitable for their own country, so it cannot be said that the constitution of any country is more like effective.
Okay, and let's see here. Kirill or Chun Dujin will be heads, and it is a tail. So Micah Belinsky, Micah, make your pro statement.
So I said it's more pro because the American Constitution is quite older, and the Korean one is I think it's from the 80s, I believe. So the sort of values and ideas of a more modern society are enshrined in a document, and it's sort of the document reflects kind of more modern views, as opposed to the American one, which was written in a world from like 240 years ago. So it's not really responsive to the current society, and I think that's why South Koreans believe that their constitution is a bit more effective.
Okay, Kim Byung-koo, make your con statement. Kim Byung-koo.
I do not think that Korean constitution is more effective, but I would like to say South Korea has had greatly influenced by the US, and we got a lot of help when we are in danger. So it is hard to say which is more effective, but we, Korea and the US have a similar appearance. Both of constitution says the importance of people and all the powers comes from the people. So in that point of view, we have a similar appearance, but we could not say which is more effective. And that's my opinion.
Okay, Kirill Amorsky, make your pro statement.
Yeah, I say that I believe that the Korean constitution is better in the sense that, just as Micah said, the American constitution is old, and there are some amendments, such as the second one about the right to bear arms, which seems today unadapted to the current situation, because we're not in the same and stable situation of the 18th century. So this is one point. And of course, it is possible to repeal or change or even add some amendments to the Constitution. But if I remember correctly, it requires a 2/3 majority. And today, in a bipartisan system with only Republicans and Democrats, which effectively and usually control about 50% of the seats each, it is mostly impossible to add such amendments on such divisive issues such as gun rights, for instance. But this is one example. Of course, there are others.
Okay, and Chung Doo-jin, make your pro statement. Chung Doo-jin. Chung Doo-jin. Chung Doo-jin, make your pro statement. Chung Doo-jin. Oh, okay, he's got a microphone problem. Well, then that's it. Okay, so please vote on the debate topic. And let me see, maybe you've already voted on the debate topic. And if you haven't, please do that. And so please do that. And we see the winner is, and it's anonymous, so I don't know who you are. I don't know who you are, so you can change your mind from your paragraph. Nobody will know. And so you see, it's an evenly divided question. Okay, well, I guess that means it was a good debate. All right, I'm going to have to close down now because I got to go teach I have to teach the other class. So I will stop the Zoom and I will be in communication with you. Okay, so bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.